Hello and welcome to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. In this video, I will be talking about multi-day severe weather threat here across the deep south into the Tennessee Valley and into the northeast here. Also, we'll be talking about the tropical system lurking into portions here of the Gulf of Mexico into the Atlantic. And then I'll be talking about your summer forecast here as we have just hit June 1st, which is the start of meteorological summer. So I'll give you your summer forecast overview and kind of look ahead at what to expect here through the month of June. So welcome back, everybody. We got a slight risk of severe weather here. The Storm Prediction Center did put out here from the interior portions of the Northeast all the way up into New York State, into much of Pennsylvania, all the way down through the Ohio Valley here, into Kentucky, portions here of the western Tennessee Valley, into portions here near the Memphis area, Nashville, getting down toward the Paducah area, and then down through portions here of Arkansas, around Little Rock, and then getting into portions here of Oklahoma into North Texas as well. This does include the Texarkana area, the just south of the Oklahoma City Metro and toward the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and then getting back here into West Texas here near the Lubbock area and Midland area here as well. What to expect here today? We do have, a cold front that is extending down here from the southern Great Lakes down through portions of the Ohio Valley, and then kind of a stationary boundary here setting up across the lower Missouri Valley into the southern plains. Along and ahead of that line here, or kind of that surface boundary, you can see that a lot of moisture here will be pooling up along that front, a lot of warm temperatures, and that will combine here for some thunderstorm activity as we head through this afternoon and into this evening. We got a lot of moisture ahead of that front, like I was saying. Dew points rising well into the 60s to around 70 degrees here, especially as you get down here into Arkansas, into portions of Oklahoma, into Texas here. Some more marginal instability here, and moisture across portions of the eastern Ohio Valley into the interior Northeast, with dew points in the upper 50s to low to mid 60s across those areas, but still supportive of a severe weather threat as we head into today. And like I was saying, the CAPE values, convective available potential energy, or instability as it's known as, will be a little bit more sparse across portions of the interior Northeast into portions of the Ohio and Tennessee Valley here, especially the eastern Tennessee Valley here today, with instability on the order of 500 to up to about 1,500 joules per kilogram across those areas. Higher instability values will be centered across portions of north central and northwest Texas, getting into Arkansas here as we head into today, and in portions of Oklahoma, northern Louisiana, where we could have instability on the order of 2,000 to locally 3,000 joules per kilogram here, so some moderate to locally strong instability across that axis here, and that's where I expect here the strongest of the storm activity and the most coverage as we head through the day today as well. We do also have some shear values here. We have a mid-level jet coming in here across the southern plains into the central plains and through the Missouri Valley. A little bit more displaced here to the north across portions of the Ohio Valley, the mid-Atlantic states, and the interior Northeast. So that's why the severe weather threat will probably, even though it is a slight risk, I think mainly be more of an isolated severe weather threat, with the isolated large hail, the isolated damaging winds here through the day. A little bit more here shear overlapping with that instability across portions of northern Texas and Oklahoma and northern portions there of Arkansas and the lower Missouri Valley. That's kind of where I'd expect the most coverage and the most intense here severe storms relative to the slight risk here as we head through the day today. So let's look at the composite reflectivity here. This is late this afternoon, continuing to see some showers and storms bubbling up from the lower Missouri Valley through portions of the southern plains. Even some storms popping up across the interior Northeast, like I said, around New York State getting down here into portions of Pennsylvania and into the Ohio Valley. This will continue to kind of move to the east, and some clustering of storms are possible across the mid-south, maybe even another cluster of storms down here towards southeastern New Mexico into West Texas here around the Fort Stockton area and just south of Lubbock here as we head toward the evening hours. And this will continue to kind of meander its way off to the east very slowly here as we head through the evening hours and overnight hours today, with kind of some repeated rounds of storms here across portions of northwest Texas into Oklahoma here, maybe some flash flooding potential across those areas with the training of storms. Also, more storms here up into portions of the Ohio Valley into the Northeast as well, and that will continue here through the overnight hours before the storms do kind of start to wane in intensity and coverage here as we head into our early Thursday morning. Then as we head into our Thursday, the Storm Prediction Center's Day 2 categorical outlook, we do have a marginal risk of severe weather across the Tennessee Valley, the deep south here, and then a slight risk zone here for much of northeastern Virginia, Maryland, and getting up here to southern New Jersey, southeastern portions there, Pennsylvania here, a little bit higher coverage of severe storm potential as we head into those areas. Also a small marginal risk zone from south central New Mexico into far west Texas here, west of Fort Stockton, kind of an open area areas here across the New Mexico and West Texas area could be having an isolated large hail or isolated microburst type of setup across those areas as we head into our Thursday as well. Like I said, that will continue here as we head through the Thursday time frame. As we head towards Thursday evening, we got that front that'll be settling down through the mid-Atlantic into the southeast here in the deep south, or along the Gulf Coast states, and then it'll kind of clear most of Texas here, except for the southern fringes there of Texas, and then this will kind of start to retreat more northward into the Four Corners here as a warm front as we head towards Thursday evening into Friday as well. Along and ahead of that front, across much of the southeast here into portions of South Texas, we'll have a lot of warm air pushing up with a lot of 90s expected, some low to mid 90s across those areas here. Also, a lot of moisture pooling up ahead of that front here during the afternoon hours here on our Thursday tomorrow, and we could have instability growing in those areas here. Some pretty strong instability here, some moderate to strong instability in pockets here across from east central Texas up through portions of the Gulf Coast states here around the Jackson, Mississippi area. Alexandria, Louisiana, getting all the way through portions of the Atlanta area, and then getting up here to the Carolinas and the portions there of Virginia, where we could have, some pockets of 2,000 to 3,000 joule per kilogram type of energy here in the atmosphere as we head into tomorrow as well. Also, the only thing that is kind of precluding any, higher severe weather probabilities from the Storm Prediction Center putting out, a slight or enhanced risk here across the deep south with all that moisture and energy is due to the fact that the deep layer shear or the stronger mid-level winds will be a little displaced to the north across the southern Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley into the northeast. And that's why they do have a slight risk across portions of Maryland, southern portions there of New Jersey, into northeastern Virginia. That's where the stronger mid-level winds will overlap that instability, all that moisture here, and that's kind of where the strongest, overlap of all those dynamics will come together. And that is why the Storm Prediction Center has put out a slight risk across those areas here as we head into our Thursday. So let's kind of look at the composite reflectivity for Thursday afternoon. Early to mid-afternoon, got some storms popping up across portions of eastern Tennessee, getting down toward portions here of northern Alabama, maybe a storm or two into northeast Texas and portions of Louisiana, a couple more storms up into West Virginia, eastern Ohio, and this will continue to kind of bubble up, storms redeveloping as we head into the afternoon across northeastern Virginia into Maryland, around the Washington, D.C. area, getting down here toward the Roanoke area in Virginia. Even some more storms kind of starting to fire up across portions of eastern and middle Tennessee, getting down here towards the Atlanta area, Tuscaloosa, getting down towards, the Birmingham area there in Alabama during the afternoon. A couple more storms might be firing up along that boundary here as we get towards East Texas, just south and east of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex here on our Thursday. And these will kind of fade out very quickly as we kind of lose all the instability and kind of the atmosphere. The surface starts to stabilize as we head into, Thursday evening into Friday morning across these areas, and some of the storms will kind of push off the East Coast here as well. Then it leads us to our Day 3 outlook, the Storm Predictions Day 3 categorical outlook for Friday. This is a slight risk of severe weather from portions of eastern and northeastern New Mexico into the western Texas Panhandle, a marginal risk extending up through the eastern Rockies, kind of some upslope type of severe weather threat there across the Denver area, and then getting up into southwestern portions of Nebraska. Also, with that lingering front across the southeast, the eastern Carolinas down into southeast Georgia can be expecting, an isolated severe thunderstorm or two within that marginal risk zone on Friday here as well. We got a lot of that warmth and energy starting to push up across those areas here on Friday with 80s, 90s, some 90s extending down into South Texas as well, northern side of Florida. Some cooler weather across South Florida here. We'll talk about that in just a moment. That is due to some tropical rains starting to push in here with that system here toward the end of the week and into the weekend here. But we can see along and ahead of that boundary, dew points rising into the upper 60s and low 70s here with a lot of instability starting to grow once again. We got some strong instability growing here through Texas. The instability across eastern New Mexico into the western Texas Panhandle, where that slight risk zone is, on the order of 1,000 to 2,000 joule per kilogram here, and that'll extend all the way up into the Denver area here into eastern Colorado, maybe southwestern portions there of Nebraska. Some instability across portions of the eastern Carolinas into southeast Georgia, where that marginal risk is, kind of on the order of 2,000, maybe 2,500 here across those areas as well. And again, the stronger mid-level winds and the stronger deep layer shear will be displaced well to the north here of where these storms are, especially into portions of the northern plains, getting into portions of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Some shear overlap with the instability across portions of eastern Colorado, getting down into maybe the Texas Panhandle, far eastern New Mexico, and that is where the instability and some of that shear starts to kind of organize itself a little bit more, and also some shear values showing up across the Carolinas. So some semi-organized multi-cells and storm structures can be possible, but overall the severe weather threat is kind of low as we head toward our Friday. And we'll show you that here on Friday, what it could look like. Maybe some storms around the DFW, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex here during the mid to late afternoon on our Friday. And then storms will be popping up across the Carolinas into eastern and southeastern Georgia here during the mid to late afternoon hours on your Friday. We got those tropical rains across the South Florida Peninsula here, across the Miami area, the Florida Keys. And then we have a lot of storms popping up from eastern Colorado, getting down into portions of east central New Mexico. And these will continue to kind of grow a little bit more intense as we head toward the peak heating of the day here on our Friday, with some supercell potential, maybe even a couple multi-cells here mixed in. So cannot rule out maybe a tornado, but I think the tornado risk on Friday is rather low with kind of the absence of that, the low-level shear, the deep layer shear in the atmosphere. These will be slow movers, though, so they could dump some heavy rain, which is much needed across some of these areas in New Mexico into Texas and Colorado, so that will be helpful. Although here the lightning threat might kind of add to that fire weather risk here as we head toward these areas as well, so we'll be mindful of that. As we head toward the weekend into Saturday morning, we'll have that warm front start to retreat back to the north into the western plains here. A lot of warm air starting to build across the Four Corners into the southern California, into Texas as well. We got that cold front kind of extending all the way past here the Gulf Coast states into the northern Gulf. We got a lot of those tropical rains continuing across portions of central and southern Florida here during this period as well. Maybe some unsettled weather here this weekend across portions of the central plains into portions of the upper Midwest here. Maybe some just showers and embedded thunderstorms here. Not terribly big severe weather threat. However, a chance of an isolated severe weather threat may extend into Saturday across portions of western Iowa, and then kind of extending down through that dry line or that cold front here, or along that warm front rather here as we get into portions of Nebraska, Kansas, and down to Oklahoma. We'll have to see how that works out. But generally here in the next few days, we're going to see some decent rainfall across North Texas and Oklahoma, getting up through the Ohio Valley, the Northeast. Can be expecting here some pockets within there of 3/4 of an inch to upwards of 2 inches worth of rainfall, especially centered on portions of southwestern Oklahoma into much of the Texas Panhandle and to North Texas here from the Dallas-Fort Worth area up toward Wichita Falls, the Oklahoma City area, El Reno, getting back toward the Amarillo area here as well. Some heavier pockets of rain up into New York State and into portions of Vermont, New Hampshire, and around the New Jersey area and the eastern portions there of Pennsylvania as well, kind of on the order of 1 to 2 inches. And then, like I said, the tropical rain system here as we head toward Florida, some heavier rainfall around the Florida Keys, South Florida, around Miami, getting down here into Central Florida. Can be expecting several inches of rain, probably upwards of 4 to 5 inches across those areas here in the next few days as well. And also that relentless rainfall across the Pacific Northwest here, with some more pockets of 1/4 inch to upwards of an inch of rainfall around the Portland area, getting up towards Seattle here as well as we head through the next few days. And concerning the tropical side of things here, we do have a tropical feature here across the portions of the southern Gulf or the southwestern Gulf, or really even the Bay of Campeche here across the Mexican area, around the Mexico area, into portions here of Central America. Some bubbling up of some thunderstorms here and some convection across portions here of the Caribbean. Not seeing too much in the way here of low-level shear or a low-level spin across these areas that warrant a big-time storm. We'll continue to watch this here across portions of the Bay of Campeche as this system will start to meander farther towards the Florida Peninsula, and that'll bring that tropical rain here as we head into the this weekend into next week, especially with potentially a storm developing here into the Atlantic as we head into next week. And you can see a lot of warm waters starting to develop and really have been there across much of the Gulf of Mexico into the Bay of Campeche here as well. Also some much warmer than average here water temperatures across much of the Atlantic, the central Atlantic, toward the Bermuda area, down through the Caribbean here. So a lot of warm waters, and once this system starts to push to the east of Florida, it will take advantage of those really warm waters and strengthen pretty quickly here potentially as we head towards the open waters of the Atlantic as we head towards next week. And you can see the kind of the hurricane frequency, the kind of tropical system analogs. You can see a lot of this time of year, we have a lot of tropical systems developing around the Bay of Campeche and then kind of moving through the Gulf and then potentially originating around portions here of the Atlantic as well. Also some higher activity across portions of the far eastern Pacific, kind of along the Baja area of California into western Mexico. A lot of areas here across that type of region here to see the development of tropical systems this time of year, kind of climatologically. But looking here at the GFS rendition of how this could work out here, GFS has a 998 millibar low around southeastern Florida Peninsula here as we head through Saturday evening, and this will kind of push to the east here as we go through time with a 999 millibar low, maybe a tropical depression, low-end tropical storm here post-Florida as it pushes to the east here in the open waters of the Atlantic. This will kind of weaken. The GFS has it weakening to a 1002 millibar low, so really kind of weak system, maybe not even a tropical depression, but we'll have to watch that here as it kind of moves into the open waters. And that'll be as we head into early next week here on, Monday into Tuesday here of June 6th and the 7th time period with the GFS. Now, looking at the European model rendition of this, it has a low a little farther north here in the east central Florida with some tropical rains pushing up a little farther to the north here on the European model. Granted, this was the model run from last night. However, it's still showing some decent rainfall across Florida, and then it has it strengthening rather here across the portions just outer banks here of the Carolinas to a 991 millibar low, maybe a lower end tropical storm or even a lower end hurricane during that time as well. And then as it pushes away, strengthening even further to a 985 millibar low, maybe a category 1 or 2 hurricane as it pushes well off here the coast of the East Coast here and pushes away from the United States here as we head into early next week. So we'll really have to see how this works out. The GFS here, the 12Z run from today, seeing some heavier rainfall across South Florida into the Florida Keys and through the Atlantic here, on the order of a few inches to several inches across South Florida, maybe upwards of 5 inches across these areas around the Miami Beach area, getting over towards portions, maybe up near here, the Naples area, Fort Myers, and then getting down here to portions of the Florida Keys. Now, the European model with the farther north track of that low, it has the rainfall a little farther to the north as well with, some heavier rains around the Tampa area, getting up toward Daytona Beach, Orlando potentially, and then kind of some heavier rain across the eastern portions of the Carolinas, potentially getting close there to the Outer Banks as we head towards early next week as well, with Florida here the hot spot for the heavy rainfall with a few inches possible there on the European run. Now looking ahead to what everybody's been wanting here is the summer outlook, the temperature outlook. This is the NOAA's seasonal temperature outlook that was released back here in May 19th. This shows the overall summer outlook of how the summer looks to play out here, well above average temperatures across the four corners, back into the Intermountain West and through the southern plains here, centered on Texas, up through the Colorado area, New Mexico, and Utah. Also some slightly higher than average probability of above average temperatures across portions of the Northeast as well. But really, as you look at the United States as a whole, from June, July, and August of this year, during the summer months, you can expect really just a slightly to well above average summer with temperature-wise across much of the United States, although here discounting the areas here across the far northern plains and the Pacific Northwest where they have equal chances here of below or above average temperatures here during the summer. But as a whole, much of the United States is expected to have a warmer than normal summer. Now, during this time frame as well, during the June, July, and August kind of overview of the summer, a lot of below normal precipitation expected here from the Pacific Northwest through parts of the western plains, getting down to the central plains and toward the Texas area here as well. So some drought conditions will be ongoing and worsening across these areas. Then you have a little sliver here into the portions of Arizona into southwestern New Mexico above average here precipitation. That could be indicative of the monsoon season that'll be beginning here into the portions of late June through July and August. So we'll have to watch that for some here much needed rainfall across those areas. Above average precipitation if you are up in Alaska as well. And then across the east coast into the southeast, above average precipitation can be favored there as well. And we always have to watch for the tropical systems here that could be feeding into this above average here rainfall type of season and into the summer months as well. So we'll have to watch that as we progress through June, July, and August. Looking at the next 6 to 10 days temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, this goes from June 6th through June 10th here, so just a few days. Well below normal temperatures expected here, kind of centered on portions of the eastern Dakotas and Minnesota. Also getting back here to the Pacific Northwest and much of the Great Lakes region here as well, where we have a broadening ridge across portions of the Four Corners into the southern plains and into the southeast. We could have above normal temperatures and really just near normal across the northeast here. And you could see a kind of an active northern stream jet stream that is going to be pushing a lot of storm systems through here as we head through portions of the first half of June, if you will, all the way almost through the first half of June through the 10th period. Some above normal precipitation expected across Wyoming, getting into the Central Plains, also across the Ohio Valley into the Northeast, where below normal precipitation can be expected here from Texas into the Four Corners and into the Nevada and California area as well. Near normal precipitation across much of the Southeast here as we head through that time frame as well. A lot of disturbances, mid-level disturbances pushing through the middle of the country here through the first week or so or week and a half of June. As we head through the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook from June 8th through the middle part of June, still continued below normal temperature-wise across much of the northern plains. Like I said, centered on portions here of Minnesota, the eastern Dakotas, Wisconsin, northern Iowa, but some cooler than normal conditions extending back to the Pacific Northwest, the central Great Lakes, and inching its way into the interior Northeast, where we have another ridge becoming established across the Southwest into the Four Corners. And that'll just continue here through much of the month of June here across the southeast, warming up here as well. And just above normal precipitation across the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and down here into the Tennessee Valley as well. And, some above average precipitation continuing across the Pacific Northwest into the northern plains. Near normal conditions across the Central Plains, and then below normal precipitation across the Four Corners, Texas area, and then getting back here into the Intermountain West as well, as we have an active northern jet stream continuing here through the middle of the month of June. Kind of looking at how June looks here just as a whole itself here with just June itself as a month, you can see below normal temperatures can be favored across portions of the Great Lakes, especially the western Great Lakes through the northern plains and the Pacific Northwest. This does not mean that June won't be warm in these areas. It just means here more than likely as June finishes up here its final days and as we head into July, the pattern does favor more of a cooler pattern across the north here, which does kind of mean that we could have more of an active storm pattern as we head toward the end of June as well. And then it's favoring more of above normal here temperatures across the Texas area into New Mexico, much of the Four Corners, and then kind of moving up the East Coast here into the Southeast, into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic as well through June. And this was just released yesterday here, so the confidence is there with maybe equal chances here in between across portions of the Ohio Valley into the Missouri Valley as well. Above normal precipitation can be expected across much of the Missouri Valley into the Central Plains, also into the Pacific Northwest, but drier conditions under that hot high pressure through June across the Texas area, getting up through portions of the Four Corners and the Intermountain West, and then above normal precipitation expected around the Florida Peninsula, getting up into the Eastern Carolinas, and that may be having to do with a lot of that tropical rain type of system here moving up through early parts of June here as well, and maybe even some more systems to come. So we'll have to watch that as we get toward later into June. As we have that high pressure here kind of stalling out across much of the Four Corners into the southwest and into the southern plains, the drought will be worsening. The U.S. seasonal drought outlook here was just released here yesterday, and it's showing much of Iowa into portions here of the rest of Nebraska into some of Kansas down through portions of Texas and much of the West getting some worsening drought conditions, or the drought will be persisting across these areas, excluding these areas from the monsoon here type of season across portions of south central and southeastern Arizona into southwestern New Mexico. The drought may improve a little bit here, or maybe even be removed with a little bit of that monsoon with a heavy rainfall. They do got to watch for some landslides here and some mudslides across those areas because of a lot of heavy rainfall in those drought-stricken areas across Arizona and southwestern New Mexico. Do want to be watching that here as we get towards the monsoon season here toward later June, July, and August here especially. As we look farther down the pike here, this is going toward the Father's Day weekend here in June. We can expect a lot of warmer or just near normal temperatures across much of the country, a little bit of a trough digging down here in the Pacific Northwest. This is looking at the climate forecasting systems model. And I know a lot of people don't like looking at this model. A lot of meteorologists don't like looking at this model because it's too far out or it's too inconvenient for them. But I think this is a very good model at looking at trends. Now, this is not going to be verbatim like you're going to have 10 degrees above average temperatures across the the Pacific Southwest and the Four Corners, but it's just showing trends of how the upper air type of pattern is going to kind of evolve with time as we head through the month of June. So heading toward Father's Day, we can expect warmer than normal temperatures with that hot high pressure across the Southwest into portions of Texas. Also some hot temperatures across the Northeast as well. It's kind of near normal across the Mississippi Valley down towards the Southeast. And then, like I said, cooler than normal around the Father's Day weekend across the Pacific Northwest into southern Canada as well, around Saskatchewan, portions of southern Manitoba, into western Ontario as well. And then this will continue. We got the hot high pressure starting to slowly pivot its way to the east. We got the trough coming down a little bit farther into California, into Nevada and the Pacific Northwest. And then as we go through time, this really starts to take shape here with a very hot summer pattern as we head toward that third week in June across portions of the Great Lakes, back into portions of the Great Plains and into the Tennessee Valley and Northeast, where that trough starts to kind of lose its punch across the Pacific Northwest, but it is still there. And then this will kind of continue to kind of redevelop. The trough will kind of come on down and redevelop across the portions of the Intermountain West and the Pacific Northwest with a very strong area of heat across portions of all the way up into Canada, into the Ontario area, into the Great Lakes, the Mid-Atlantic, and portions here of the center of the country. And then as this trough kind of digs into those areas here, as we head toward the third week in June, we could set up a ring of fire pattern where we have a high pressure system centered around somewhere around the southern plains into the desert Southwest and the Four Corners, and we have this ring of fire pattern around the outer edge of that, where we could have type of a windstorm, or as we like to call it, derecho type setup here, where we have a lot of squall lines starting to originate into the northern plains and then dive to the south and east through the western Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and then make its way over toward the mid-Atlantic here. And that is the concern as we start to get into the third week in June, and then even as we extend farther here into portions of July, this could even be the case as we have a strong trough that looks like to be diving in potentially sometime in that third week in June, towards the end of June, and going towards that July 4th holiday. So we'll watch that, and then another ridge becomes reestablished, and we'll kind of reload that pattern as we head toward the July 4th period here as well. And you can see that clearly with the precipitable water values and precipitable water anomalies here across the eastern 2/3 or half of the country here. A lot of water in the atmosphere. The corn will be starting to mature more across the Midwest here into the central plains during this time frame, so a lot of higher dew points across these areas, and that'll yield some higher instability here. And I mean, you can't take this model verbatim for like the instability, but it is showing trends that higher instability is expected across the upper Midwest into the western Great Lakes, and that could favor a derecho setup here as we have day after day potentially of higher instability type setups across portions of the northern plains into the western Great Lakes. And this will continue through much of the third week in June, and really even beyond, going through the July 4th holiday. So looking at this as a whole through the entire month of June, we could expect a very active pattern across much of the central and northern plains, the upper Midwest, and through the Great Lakes, and even the Northeast. Maybe even some active weather across the Southeast here. When you see higher than normal precipitation anomalies across the Southeast here, it kind of makes you wonder if we'll start to see more tropical activity across the Gulf and the Caribbean during that time frame as well. So we'll definitely have to be watching that. And unfortunately, the drier conditions will continue across portions of the Four Corners into Southern California, Southern Nevada here as we head through much of the month of June, with that drought continuing to worsen across the desert Southwest here as well. So thank you for watching. I know it's a lot to take in, but here I did want to give you my summer outlook and also that severe weather threat here potential through the rest of the week as well. So do be sure to like my video, give me a nice thumbs up here, and leave any comments, questions below. I'll be able to answer those. And remember to subscribe to my channel here. My next goal is 200 subscribers, so please help me get there. And I know I can do it, so thank you very much for watching, and have a great Wednesday, everybody.